We are celebrating Hanukkah in Ladino, and then the church bells ring. We walk down the street, and the mosque calls to prayer. This is Istanbul, one of the most cosmopolitan cities in the world. In Istanbul, a synagogue, a church, and a mosque can be found within steps of each other. Inside the synagogue, people were lighting candles, singing, chanting. Outside, there was anger, people telling Jewish tour groups to leave. Istanbul has always been a place where worlds meet. The question is, what happens when those worlds begin to pull apart?
I'm Jeff.
And I'm Sujata.
Do you dream of hitting the open road?
Of the adventures and eclectic people you run across on the way? Are you waiting for the right moment, the right shot of courage?
I thought that. In 2016, I had a stroke. But then in 2022, we got married, and now we're traveling the world, enjoying adventure and romance.
In Montreal, Jeff and I knew that we would have to think differently about filming in Turkey. Jeff may not be worried, but I'm a little bit worried about filming in Turkey, so I'm actually going to use my phone, and I'm not going to be doing as much of a filming as normal because I don't know what's going to happen. I do know that there's been less democracy in the last while. We weren't sure if we'd need special permissions or what would happen if we didn't have them. So we kept it simple. And then there was something else. After the October 7th massacre in Israel and war in Gaza, tensions across the region were high. Turkey took a strongly critical stance towards Israel, and the atmosphere felt charged. Some analysts point to the presence of Hamas figures in Turkey. There were reports circulating of incidents targeting Jews and of businesses refusing Jews service. And we didn't quite know what that would mean for Jeff as a Jewish traveler.
I'm worried that the Jewish community throughout the world, and I'm certain that Turkey would not be an exception to that, would be under heightened awareness right now. I'm worried about the increase in anti-Semitism throughout the world. That has me concerned.
Our fears were reinforced when the very day we landed in Istanbul, a Hanukkah celebration in Bondi Beach, Australia, was targeted in a violent attack, killing 15 people. Istanbul is one of my favorite cities which I visit on repeat. There are few cities in the world like this. Between the Middle East and Europe, Istanbul is a city of mythic mosques and minarets, set against cobblestone streets, bustling, colorful markets, and rooftop views over the Bosphorus. Historically, it's a major hub of international trade, but also of faith. Islam, Judaism, Roman Catholicism, and Greek Orthodoxy, all layered into the fabric of the city, where you can be with Iranians, Saudis, Russians, and share a hookah with Italians and French tourists at night. You see Russians, young people, avoiding the draft, Ukrainians fleeing the war. There are Uyghurs, Chinese Muslims, Syrian refugees, Kazakh traders, all finding refuge here. And yes, a historical Jewish community which calls the city home. Galata's iconic tower, narrow streets lined with artisans, wares, and cafes, and the bridge below all draw tourists from around the world. Galata's tourists compete to take pictures of these stairs. But they are more than just a selfie spot. They are a testimony to the Jewish community. Abraham Salomon Kamondo, a Jewish philanthropist and businessman, built these stairs and helped turn Galata into a financial center.
We're here in Galata, or in Greek, Pera. This area is interesting in terms of the Jewish perspective because we have three waves of Jewish migration to this area here. First the Romaniacs, followed by the Sephardim, followed by the Ashkenazim.
In Galata, the story of Istanbul's Jewish community isn't told in one place. It's told across synagogues. Jews lived here as early as 1100. First the Romaniots, the original Greek-speaking Jews of the region. This is Neve Shalom, one of the central synagogues. It reflects the largest wave after 1492, when Jews were expelled from Spain. They were forced to convert or flee. The Ottoman Sultan Bayezid II offered them refuge. Sephardim, as they are called, spoke Ladino, a language rooted in Spanish and Hebrew influences. Their traditions, like henna at weddings, feel closer to the East than to Eastern Europe. This is the Italian synagogue, another Ashkenazi synagogue. And then the Ashkenazi synagogue, Jews arriving later from Russia and Eastern Europe, fleeing pogroms and revolution.
Something of note is that during the very volatile population exchange of the 20th century between the Greeks and the Turks, the Jewish people were left untouched by this very dramatic event. As a result, they were saved from the Holocaust.
In 1933, leader Ataturk invited scientists under threat in Nazi Germany and Austria to rebuild their lives here. While much of Europe became a graveyard, Istanbul remained a place where Jewish life continued.
There's still a very small Jewish community here to this day.
There are 14,000 Jews in all of Turkey and more than a dozen synagogues in Istanbul. Many Turkish Jews left for Israel or reclaimed Spanish or Portuguese citizenship. The Jewish Museum of Turkey keeps their memory alive, preserving the history, telling the story. Security, memory, and tension are only one layer of the city because Istanbul has always been something else, a gathering place. Up the hill from Galata is Pera, with its French and Italian Belle Epoque architecture. Pera feels like the stage set for Murder on the Orient Express. Elegant, international, and a little bit mysterious. Its embassies, hotels, and theaters ooze charm and sophistication. Connected by Istiklal Avenue, a pedestrian street with its historic tram, it winds its way to Taksim Square. But the Middle East influences are here too. Palaces along the Bosphorus, the Egyptian market overflowing with color, rooftops looking out over the Hagia Sophia and the Blue Mosque. In Beşiktaş, the Alamor Pavilion, a former imperial retreat, reveals the quieter side of Ottoman life, with its gardens and hunting grounds. Not far is the Churaan Palace, considered one of the most romantic hotels in the world. This Pankempitsky Hotel is a former Ottoman palace, with sumptuous grounds overlooking the Bosphorus. And here my Prince Charming, Jeff, treated me to a spectacular show of hot chocolate. We hopped a public transit ferry. It was a bit difficult for Jeff to find his balance on the boat, but taking the ferry was sublime. As the ferry approaches Eminönü, the city rises all at once. Domes and minarets fill the skyline, and then, right at the water's edge, the new mosque. Its courtyard spilling out into the square, pigeons lifting into the air, crowds moving in every direction. To the right, the Egyptian bazaar, its arches pulling you into a maze of color and spice. Ahead, the Galata Bridge, fishermen lying shoulder to shoulder, boats weaving underneath. The Galata Tower not far on the other side. This is Istanbul, where faith and movement all collide at the water's edge.
Istanbul, Constantinople. This is where the Council of Nicaea was convened in the 3rd century, in the Common Era. That was a very important meeting that still has an impact to this very day in major parts of Christianity, because that is where the doctrine of the Trinity was nailed down to unify religious practice throughout Christendom.
Jeff and I had a traditional kebab and chai at the Hamdi restaurant overlooking the tower. Getting on the boat was difficult, but coming back was a nightmare. The city that felt easy and fluid to me was not the same city for Jeff.
There was one point that we were at the Egyptian market and we couldn't use the app because of it's a
very congested area. So we had to negotiate with the cab that was on site. And I think what they asked us for, 30 euros?
30 euros, when normally that would probably cost 10 euro maximum for the distance.
Yeah, and so he basically, we didn't have any choice, we took it. And then what happened afterwards?
Well, an argument ensued between the driver and myself because he suggested that he basically doubled the cost of the ride. And that's midway there.
And, and he was very belligerent about it.
He's belligerent, then I became belligerent. We were both belligerent for about 15 minutes straight. And the end result of it is he wanted to drop me off in the middle of the street, which he ultimately did.
Because of the barriers, places like Hagia Sophia and the Blue Mosque were simply out of reach for Jeff. And instead of understanding, people rushed him.
People were a little bit less willing to give me extra time just to get in and out of the taxi. I need about 15 seconds more than anybody else to get inside of a cab. But that wasn't to be in Turkey.
And I remember that one time when we were getting out of the cab and from the hotel, and there were police people, and instead of telling everybody to wait for you, they were telling you to rush, and the cab driver that was holding you to rush and get and stop holding off traffic. As well, inflation had already changed daily life, with prices rising sharply, 7 times what they were in 2020. Residents are constantly hustling. And a destination that once felt affordable, where you could enjoy luxuries you couldn't at home, now felt closer to traveling in Switzerland with $10 bottled water. And it wasn't just daily life that was changing. There was a visible shift in the role of religion in public life, the state becoming more closely intertwined with Islam, and the streets of Istanbul more women choosing to wear the veil, something that was unheard of in the early decades of the Turkish Republic. But who gets space is changing. Hagia Sophia, built as an Orthodox cathedral, later a museum, is now, once again, a mosque. The Jewish community had to deal with threats. The Neve Shalom Synagogue been the site of deadly attacks, most notably in 1986 and 2003, when gunmen and bombings targeted worships during Shabbat, killing dozens. As a result, the Turkish police maintain a visible presence, stationed at all the synagogues across the city, and the week we arrived, it was Hanukkah. We wanted to join them to celebrate the last night. Why didn't you attend the Hanukkah ceremony with me?
Oh, that's a bit of a long story. Actually, because of my mobility challenges, location of the Hanukkah ceremony is in the Jewish Community Center, which was down a cobbled street, which was just a little bit difficult, the nature of those cobbles, for me to traverse with my cane.
And I tried to get you a wheelchair, and the security was very tight, so they wouldn't let me get the wheelchair, and I had to just go in without you. Inside, there was joy and beauty, even with many veiled Turks looking on, candlelighting, singing. They played Ocho Candelicas, a Ladino Hanukkah song, a tribute to the 8 candles of Hanukkah, a lovely testimony of survival. During the ceremonies, church bells rang nearby. Shortly after, the neighborhood mosque had a call to prayer. But outside, they were screaming for Zionists to get out. That day, a tour group near the Jewish Museum in Galata were met by angry protesters. The neighborhood police intervened, and luckily, there were no physical attacks. But every day, Jewish Turks walk a tightrope, balancing their Jewish identity with their place in Turkish society, made more complicated by the harsh rhetoric between Turkey and Israel. Walking through Istanbul, you can feel something changing. But this is Istanbul, beautiful, complex, uncertain, a city where worlds meet. The question now is whether those worlds can still live side by side.
The thrill of the road does not end with a stroke. Come travel with us.
Please subscribe to our channel, Fierce Travel, and ring the bell for more notifications.
So do it.